What is up, guys? I'm the Senator, and I think it's fair to say that Ubisoft and the Rainbow Six Siege player base doesn't get along so well. It seems that every time Ubisoft makes a change to the game, it seems that a majority of the community is largely against it. And I think that if I were to ask you to name 5 things that Ubisoft has done in the past year that you approve of, and then ask you to name 5 things that you disapprove of, I can pretty much guarantee it's going to be a lot easier for you to name the 5 things that you disapprove of. And I see it all the time. People are complaining that Ubisoft doesn't listen to the community and that they're ruining the game that we love. And to an extent, it's fair for us to think that when they do something like taking away Mozzie's Super Shorty, taking away Buck's frag grenades, making Jaeger a 2-speed, taking away his ACOG, getting rid of Ash's ACOG. So many things that make it harder for us to enjoy the game that we love. And I'm going to ask you to not take what I'm about to say and think that I'm a Ubisoft apologist and that I'm one of those creators that thinks that their game does no wrong and that it's perfect and better than any other games. You know, those creators, I don't want to be one of those guys. I don't think that Ubisoft is amazing. But I am able to cut Ubisoft some slack. Now, I'm not saying that you should. I'm not trying to convince you that you should. But I'm going to explain to you why they do so many things that we disagree with and why it's so hard for them to balance this game. And the reason that Ubisoft is constantly doing things that we may not understand or agree with is because they're developing a highly competitive first-person shooter that spans across platforms and skill levels. And it's because of how diverse the player base is in terms of the platform and skill level that I think that there should be a different build of this game for the professional players. And I think this is a great idea because Ubisoft is developing a game in which people who play on Xbox, and I'm not, dissing Xbox players, but people who play on Xbox are playing the exact same game as someone who plays on PC as a professional. The guy who works a 9-to-5 job who probably hates his life, wants to just come home and play in casual, and is playing the exact same game as someone who does this for a living. Of course, it's different when you look at, the match length and map pools and all that kind of stuff, but nonetheless, they're pretty much playing the exact same game. And Ubisoft has to try to find that balance between keeping the game as fun and interesting for the casual players and keeping it highly competitive and balanced for the professional players. And you can look at other sports, for example. Different rules apply to different skill levels. A high school soccer team plays on a different regulation field than a professional organization. You wouldn't expect a high school team to play on a professional field which is bigger and has a larger goal. Same thing with basketball. A high school team has a shorter court and a closer three-point line than the NBA, and these differences exist because of the huge skill gap between these players. And just imagine not having those differences between court sizes where a basketball organization would have to constantly balance the game for both players at the high school level as well as the NBA. There would be a lot of things that both player bases hate, and that's very similar to what's going on in Rainbow Six Siege right now. And it's because of the lack of differences between the professionals and the rest of the player base that Ubisoft is stuck trying to do this balancing act. They have to keep their game fun and interesting for the majority of the players who are casual, because if they can't keep them happy, their game will die. And there's also another divide between the people who only play casual and quick match and people who just only play ranked. And so Ubisoft has to keep that portion of the community happy as well. And some may argue that the casual player base and the players who primarily play in ranked would be one and the same. But I think back to when it was announced that House was getting a rework and it wouldn't be put into the ranked pool, it showed that there was a split in the community. We had players like myself who were pissed because they were devoting resources to the least competitive map ever rather than reworking a map that was in the ranked playlist. And then Ubisoft has to keep the professional players happy, and this is where we start to see the biggest divide, because the difference between players who only play in casual and just play in ranked is significant, but doesn't even compare to the players who play this game at the professional level. Professional players aren't even playing the same game at all. If you've never seen professional play, go watch a match. They may be playing the same maps, the same operators, but how they go about tackling this game is just so completely different. And so Ubisoft has to make this competitive shooter balanced at the highest level while still keeping it interesting for the players who don't really play this game competitively at all. And that's where we start to see things like the Goyo nerf. Goyo was absolutely insane in Pro League, but wasn't doing too well in the casual and ranked pool. Goyo was an operator that was overwhelming to one group of players and extremely underwhelming to another. So they decided it would be best to keep the pro players happy and make Goyo pretty much non-existent for the players who play casual and ranked. And I think this is the same reason as to why we'll never really see a change to Castle. I made a video about this and how it's so hard to balance Castle because for regular players like you and me, Castle can be useful, but overall across the board is very underwhelming and is picked less than 5% of the time. Then you can look at Pro League where he's picked around 30% of the time and can actually be an extremely strong operator. So the casual community would love to see a buff to Castle so he can actually be used more, but any buff to Castle would make him insane and completely overwhelming in Pro League. And now when looking at Melusi, we see a similar problem. Melusi is already insanely strong for the casual community, and then when you consider the 20-second meta that is in Pro League, where the entire round is dedicated to the attackers taking out shields, whether it be regular deployable shields or Goyo shields, Evil Eyes, bulletproof cameras, castle barricades, and then an operator like Melusi who has 3 devices that are bulletproof, just makes things worse for the professional players. And because of this, I would not be surprised at all if Melusi gets nerfed into oblivion similar to Goyo in order to try to find that balance between the casual and professional players. And when looking at Melusi, it will be easier for the devs to, nerf her, but not nerf her out of existence, considering that she already has 3 Banshees and they can adjust, how far away they're able to affect the attackers. So I don't think anything they do to her will be as significant as Goyo's, but Ubisoft has changed operators in order to make a particular player base happy. And I think that this balancing act is really hurting the game to where both player bases are typically very unhappy. And I think that making another build of this game for the professional players would be the best solution. Now, I'm no expert, but as far as the technical limitations behind making another build of the game, I don't see how it could be too ridiculously hard for them to do so. I mean, they have a build for Xbox, PlayStation, and they have 2 builds for PC. They have the main build and the test server. And so making another build designed for the professional players would make everyone a lot happier and would make this game a lot healthier. And Ubisoft's biggest priority should be to keeping this game healthy, active, and fun for casual players who make up the largest portion of this game and are the ones that are keeping this game running. However, Ubisoft also understands that esports help the game stay relevant and will help it last longer. And I don't know about you guys, but right now, Pro League is just so boring because it takes 20 seconds to do anything. It's a 5v5 until 20 seconds is left because the entire time is spent taking out defender utility. And I think it'll be difficult for new players to even become interested in watching Pro League because of that. And in a period where we have a lot of creators and even professional players that are leaving this game because of how buggy the game is and the constant balancing changes that so many of us disagree with, I think making another build of the game will resolve a lot of the balancing problems that both player bases see and deal with. Because, like it or not, the professionals are playing a completely different game than us regular folk who just hop in for a couple hours a day to play with our friends. And again, the best example is looking at high school basketball versus the NBA. If there was just an overall I-seeing basketball commission that made rules for both player bases would be extremely unhappy. And so I think it would just be best for everyone if you had 2 builds of the game optimized for the different player bases. And if any of you are somewhat of an expert as far as the technical aspects of making another version of this game for the pro players and why it is or is not feasible or profitable for them to, be putting the resources into making another version, please let me know down below, because if it's as simple as taking the base game and then copying and pasting it and just making small tweaks designed for the professional players, I see no reason as to why there isn't a second version. Maybe players won't be as interested in watching Pro League if the pro version is slightly different, but what I do know is generally both professionals and just the regular overall player base like you and me is unhappy with how this game is being balanced, and having 2 builds to balance for Pro League and the base game would make it a lot better in the long run. We wouldn't see Goyle being nerfed into oblivion, and we would see players like Castle getting a buff. But not only do I think, having 2 builds would benefit both us regular players and the professionals, but it would greatly benefit Ubisoft, seeing as though I think more people would be interested in watching Pro League because they could find ways to tackle this 20-second meta, maybe get rid of some defender utility and make Pro League a lot more interesting than it already is, because I don't know about you, as of right now, it's not fun watching them try to get rid of Evil Eyes and deployable shields for 2.5 minutes and then deciding to run the site and to kill people. So not only will this solution make the casual player base and the competitive professional players happy, but it will make the viewers happy of those who like to watch the professional play. And so that's about it. Let me know what you think. Do you think that this would be something that would help both player bases? Would it make the professional players happy? Would it make us regular folk happy? Would it improve the Pro League scene? Let me know what you think. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to go ahead and leave it a like. Also, remember to subscribe and hit the bell icon. That way you can be notified every time I post a video. That helps me out a lot. And thank you for sticking around to the end of the video. I'm the Senator, and as always, have a good one.